Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by me. You've just got me today. I thought I'd do a single-hander episode of the podcast, and I'll keep it fairly short, right? So what I wanted to talk about today is this topic of identity. So as adoptees, we often feel unsure of our identity. We feel ungrounded. We're not sure who we are. We've got this voice going on and on in our heads, and we think that this voice is often, people call it the inner critic. Some people call it the ego. Some people call it the devil inside. That's in an In Excess song, I think. Great band. Anyway, so here's the first thing, right? The first thing that I learned on my after my personal on my personal spiritual journey, or after my midlife crisis. Either it's one of those things. So I'm going back about, when are we going back to 2009, I think, here. And I spent a fantastic week with some great people, led by a guy called Richard Wilkins and a lady called Liz Ivory. And we spent, can you believe it, a week basically looking at the fact that we are not the voice in our heads. Right? I saw that for myself, not as an intellectual idea, not as a plausible theory, but in the guts of my soul. We are not the voice in our head, right? We're not the voice in our head. You are not the voice in your head. I am not the voice in my head. So, clarity there. We are not the voice in the head. Next one. So many of us have been living with trauma through so much of our lives. We think the trauma is us. Right? We think that we are our trauma. Okay. So next question then is, what's trauma made of? It's, for me, it's that toxic cocktail with some very, very strong feelings like anger and insecurity and fear. Those are the three strongest ingredients that make up a trauma cocktail for me. And then there's some thoughts as well, but that thought that we're not good enough. But here's the thing: trauma may be a toxic cocktail of anger, fear, and insecurity, and negative thoughts. But you and me, we're the glass, not what's in it. We're not with the container that contains the thoughts and feelings. We are not the substance that's in that cocktail glass. So we're not the voice in our head. We're not our trauma. So who are we, right? So you're listening to Simon Bent. But for a while, I was David Anthony Flower. until I was 5 weeks old and my mum and dad collected me from the adoption agency, I was David Anthony Flower. So if I've had, the truth is always true. If I've had two names, as I have, as many of us have, as many even non-adopted people have, maybe they got married, so they changed their name when they got married, and they came into the world without a name. They were baby X or baby Brown. They didn't have their own name. So we're not our name, right? We're not our name. That's just something that's given to us, right, by our, firstly by our biological parents, sometimes, and secondly by our adoptive parents. So we're not our name. Next thing I could say, well, I'm adopted. Well, I'm using that phrase, I am adopted. Well, no, being adopted was something that happened to me, and we are not the events that happened to us. Okay. Next thing, I could describe myself. So, I'm an adoptee. I use that word now. Yeah, hello, Simon. Hello, I'm Simon. I'm an adoptee. Well, that's just another label. That's just another label. It's shorthand. It's a label that we give ourselves, or other people's give us, right? I could say I'm traumatized by being adopted. Well, again, that's a feeling, right? We say I am traumatized, but what we're in that description, we're missing a word, and the word is feeling. So I am feeling traumatized. I have been triggered by this rejection. It's brought back this negative feeling from deep within me, and then it stays for a while, and then it goes. So it's not essential to us. It's not the essence of who we are. It's an intermittent. Feelings are intermittent. They come and go, and what's true never changes. What's true never changes. So our feelings aren't the truth of who we are. And I could say, well, so I'm not good enough. I could describe myself as, well, I've felt not good enough. I've thought that I'm not good enough. So those thoughts, they come and go in the same way as our feelings come and go. So we are not our thoughts any more than the clouds are the sky. Right? The clouds roll in, they disappear, revealing the sky behind them. So who am I then? Who are we? We're not our we're not the voice in the head. We're not the trauma. We're not our names. We're not the events that happen to us. We're not our feelings. We're not our thoughts. Who are we? Well, we're the one that is aware of all that. And the simplest metaphor that I've got for that is that sky metaphor. I'm not a Buddhist, but the Buddhist girls use that metaphor to say that we are the sky, and the sky is not damaged by the clouds that veil it. And I guess another metaphor comes to mind is that diamond one that I use quite a lot, right? So the diamond in the clenched fist. I hold a glass diamond in the clenched fist. The diamond is is hidden, it's veiled by the fist, the clenched fist. The clenched fist is the metaphor for trauma. The clenched fist is the metaphor for trauma. But being clenched, it's not the natural position for our hand. As we open it up, it reveals the diamond that's within it. And I guess that diamond might have a label on it. It might have a label on it that says 2-carat diamond, I don't know, £2,000, $3,000, whatever it is. And this is where the metaphor kind of runs out, right? Because all metaphors have their limitations. And a glass diamond in my hand, the one I use when I'm doing the webinars and podcasts, was £8, $9.50, something like that, right? So it has a value, but our value as human beings, as adoptees, that's infinite. That's infinite. Our value is, despite our feelings to the contrary. But here's the thing, right? What changes our lives is insights, sights from within. And we can't, there's no such thing as a second-hand insight. If I could make you have this place this infinite value on yourself, then I would, but I can't. You have to see it for yourself. And to do that, you have to look. My job, as I see it, is to try and point you to your infinite value, point you to who you are underneath the trauma that you've been through, underneath the trauma that you feel, is that perfect diamond. The clenched fist cannot damage the diamond that is held within it. I encourage you to see your self-worth for yourself, despite what that voice in your head is telling you about you. That voice in the head that's telling you about you, it's got your voice, but it isn't you. You're the one that hears the voice in your head, not the one that speaks it. You weren't born with a voice in your head. You weren't born with thoughts. You weren't born understanding concepts. You were born unconditioned, perfect. And your spirit, your essence, your consciousness is perfect. The wound is to your sense of self, but your sense of self is not yourself. Our sense of, that's why we call it, we got a sense of ourself, but our sense of self is not the same as ourself. The self is that diamond that's hidden, that's veiled, that's obscured by our trauma, by our thoughts, by our feelings. And the label on the diamond that gives its value is not the diamond itself. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. As always, my email address is simon@thrivingadoptees.com. I'll speak to you again very soon. Thanks a lot, listeners. Goodbye.